everyone, it's Miss Billings. Today we're going to be talking about rounding. And so I wanted to show you this hundreds rounding chart. And I wanted us to notice a couple of things about it. Well, first of all, I see this really dark black line in the middle of my screen. And I see that it's between the numbers 4 and 5. I wonder what that means. I think it's important. We'll find out. Also, I see that all of these numbers, 0 through 90, counting by tens, are blue. And then I see on this side the same thing, 10 through 100. Those are all blue. I think that's important too. Well, let's go find out why. So I'm going to show you a couple of methods on how to round. And the first one I want to show you is important because it's an acronym that can help you remember the steps to rounding. So it's the CUBA method, C-U-B-A. And that stands for circle the number that you're rounding, underline the number to the right. B, is it a boss or a baby? The number that you underlined, is it a 0 through a 4, which just stays the same? Or is it a boss who's a bossy number and tells the number that you circled to move up? The A stands for add zeros to all the places behind the circled number. So my number is 356. So I'm going to write down the number 356. Well, my first step is that I'm going to circle the number that I'm rounding to. Well, my instructions tell me to round to the nearest 10. So I'm going to circle my tens place. Next, U stands for underline the number to the right. That's 6. So the next step is B. Is it a baby or a boss? Is this 6 a number that comes between 0 and 4 or between 5 and 9? You're right. It comes between 5 and 9, which means it's a bossy number. And he's going to tell that 5 that he needs to move on up. So I'm going to keep my 3 in the hundreds place because I'm just rounding to the tens. And my 6 is going to boss number 5 around and tell him he needs to move on up to a 6. And then add zeros to all the places behind the circled number. So my new number is 360. 356 rounds to 360. All right, I wanted to come back to this chart because I thought this was a good point for us to talk about why these numbers are important, what the blue numbers mean, and what this bold line means in the middle. So my numbers on the side are counting by tens. So when you're counting within 100, all of your numbers are going to fall between your tens, whether it's between 30 and 40, whether it's between 50 and 60, or 70 and 80. It's going to fall somewhere between those numbers. So say you're looking at the number 37, and you're looking at this hundreds chart, and you're wondering, I wonder what number it falls between. Well, it falls between 30 and 40. Now, that halfway point that we talked about is this bold line right here in the middle. So if it is a 5 or greater, 5 to 9, that's that bossy number. And if it's a 1 to 4 or a 0 to 4, then that's your baby. That's where it stays the same. So my 7 right here is a bossy number, and it's telling me that that 3 is going to round up to a 4, and so my number is going to round to 40. But when you're looking at this 100s rounding chart, you can see that 37 is obviously a lot closer to 40 than it is to go all the way back to 30. That's why this hundreds chart is very important. And sometimes if you wanted to draw it out, that would be fine. It takes a long time, but it is a strategy that you can use. So now I'm going to use a number line, and that's going to help me figure out what two numbers does 356 fall between. Well, I know I'm looking at my tens place, so I'm looking at a very small range of numbers. My first number here is 350. And I know that 356 falls between 350 and 360, but I just want to figure out which one it's closer to. So I can go through and I can number each of these spaces. So I have 350, Then I have 351, 352, 353, 354, and so on until I get to my number. Okay, so now I have all the numbers that go between 350 and 360. So now I'm going to circle the place value that shows me where my number is. Now remember, I'm looking for 356, right here. Now, what is halfway between 350 and 360? Well, the middle of that number line is 355. So is 356 closer to 360 or closer to 350? Well, if we're looking at where the middle of this number line is, I see that my number is to the right of the middle. So that means that this number will round up to 360. Now I'm going to go outside and I'm going to show you a really cool trick about how to round using a balloon.
All right, so now I'm going to show you that balloon method that I was talking about. All right, so our number was 356. So 356, my instructions told me to round to the nearest tens place. So I'm going to circle the tens place. And then I'm going to look next door to my neighbor who's going to tell me what to do. All right, so 356. All right, on my balloon, I'm imagining that I am holding a 5. Can you see this? Yes, I am holding that 5. See my circle around my 5 here? It's kind of like an imaginary balloon. So I'm holding my balloon and I am going to release 6 fingers. And I'm going to see, does my balloon stay in my hand or does it rise? Does it go up to the next number? Does it round up? So here we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh my gosh, my balloon rose to the up and it rounded to a 6. It went up. So now what that means is that my 5 rose to a 6, my hundreds place stays the same, and everything after it becomes a 0. Okay, just for an example, I'm going to show you how this would work if it did not round up to the next number. So 353, I'm going to round to the nearest 10, and I'm going to circle my tens place and underline my 3. So I'm remembering that I'm holding this 5 balloon in my hand, okay? Remember, this is like your circle is like your balloon. You're holding that number. And this time I'm going to let go of 3 fingers. Ready? 1, 2, 3. What do you notice? My balloon doesn't go anywhere. It stays in my hand. So that means that my number 5 stays the same. My hundreds place also stays the same, and everything else becomes a 0.
Okay, I just showed you a really fun way to round with a balloon, but now I'm going to show you my absolute favorite method. Now this method is going to be pretty silly, but I guarantee you are never ever going to forget it. I want you to imagine that you are this student right here, and you need to go to the restroom, and you are in the middle of a really long hallway. Well, my number is still 356. They go that the two numbers that my number falls between is 350 and 360. Well, you are 356. Let's find out where you go on the number line. Well, I know by looking at my number line that it is, here's my halfway point. Now, if you're walking down the hallway, and you pass the halfway point, which one would it make more sense for you to go to the bathroom? Because you've really got to go. It's an emergency. So wouldn't you rather just jump on over to this restroom or to go all the way back to this restroom? Absolutely. You're going to take the shortest route and you're going to go to this restroom right here. It is the closest one that you can get to. So that's knowing that my 356 is going to round up to 360. Really funny method, but it gets your point across and you'll never forget it. We just got finished rounding the number 356 to the nearest tens place. So now let's round 425 to the nearest hundreds place. All right, so I'm going to start with my Cuba method. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write down my number 425. Well, this time I'm rounding to the nearest hundreds place. Can you tell me what number is in the hundreds place? You're right, it's 4. So I'm going to circle the number that I'm rounding, and then I'm going to underline the number to the right, and that number is a 2. Well, then we have to figure out, is that 2 a boss or a baby? Is it a baby who is the number 0 through 4 and it stays the same? Or is it a boss who's bossy and pushes up the number? And that's numbers 5 through 9. So my 2, yep, it's a baby. That means that my 4 stays the same, and we're going to add zeros to all the places behind it. So 425, the 4 stays the same in the hundreds place, and everything else becomes a 0. And my new number is 400. All right, the next method I'm going to show you is a reminder of the balloon method. So imagine that you're holding a balloon in your hand, and that balloon is number 4. You're holding your 4 balloon right here for the hundreds place. Now I'm going to let go of my fingers of however many places are in the underlined space. 1, 2. Well, looky here, I'm still holding this imaginary string. And that's what was my balloon number? 4. You're right. So that means my 4 stays the same and all the other numbers become a 0. So I still have 400. So my number 425 is in between 2 whole hundreds. So one of the numbers is 400. That's where it starts. Now what would the other hundreds be? You're right, it's 500. So my number 425 falls between 400 and 500. I'm going to write down all the numbers that come between 400 and 500 if I'm counting by tens. I'll be right back. Okay guys, so if you look right here, I have added all of the numbers that come between 400 and 500 if you're counting by tens. Well, remember, my number is 425. So if I'm going to try to figure out where that number would fall in between this number line, I know that it's going to go between 420 and 430. And I know that 425 is the halfway point between those numbers. So it's going to fall right here. Now, what is the halfway point between 400 and 500? You're right, it's 450. So, is my number to the left or to the right of the halfway point? You're right, it's to the left. So that means that my number is closer to 400 than it is to 500. Okay, now here's my favorite method again, the long hallway method. Now, remember, you're walking down a really long hallway and you've got to go to the restroom. So what are you going to do? Are you going to go to the bathroom all the way to the end of the hall or the one that you came from? Well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find my halfway point. Now, looking at my number line over here, it's going to tell me that my 425 is going to be about right here. Okay, so now let's figure out which restroom we're closer to. Are we closer to the restroom that is 400 or the restroom all the way down here, which is 500? You're right. We are closer to the restroom that is 400. So that means instead of going all the way down the hallway to go to the restroom at the 500 bathroom, we're going to the restroom at the 400 bathroom because it's closer. I don't really care which strategy you use, whether you like the balloon rounding or you like the long hallway method, or even if you like to use a number line, as long as it's able to help you to understand rounding. Have a great day.